evening, everyone. On behalf of IGNC and CATS, I welcome all the speakers and each one of you to the last Play Stories session of Festival of Places 2020-21, jointly hosted by Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, IGNC in New Delhi, and CATS. The Festival of Places is an initiative of CATS, a not-for-profit organization working in the area of heritage conservation, management, and advocacy since 2001. We at CATS feel very strongly about the dismal state of our public spaces in our cities and firmly believe change in the way we think, talk, and use public spaces can only begin at the grassroots by creatively engaging people with places and empowering them to make a difference to the places and spaces around. The Festival of Places is an idea born out of the spirit of volunteerism to come together, collaborate, co-create, and celebrate places that nurture health, happiness, and foster community living. Moreover, the festival aims to help discover the much overlooked human dimension of places. The main highlight of the festival this year is Play Stories, a series of online storytelling sessions that help understand the hidden dimensions, multiple interpretations, and varied memories associated with places, highlighting their distinct characteristics as well as unraveling the bond that people have with them, a connection that lives through their experiences. The storytelling sessions by professionals, scholars, and students from diverse fields focused on public spaces have been planned around the idea of exploring memory in places. Mumbai is so much more than the skyscrapers, the glitz of Bollywood, and Asia's largest slums in their shadows. It is a seaside city that was once a collection of settlements spread across 7 islands, a pristine environment crisscrossed with rivers and natural streams, mangroves and water bodies, rich flora and fauna. Today, we'll engage with the different waterscapes across Mumbai and explore the city's beautiful connection with water through its public spaces. The title of today's play story is Water Bodies of Bombay, and the theme for this session is Waterscape as an Experiential Social Space. Our play storyteller for the session, Kuhu Deshpande, will be taking us to different waterscapes across Mumbai and share her memories and experiences with us. The play's experts for the session, Mr. Rishi Agarwal and Ms. Chavi Lal, will together explore the city's deep bonding with water. Our play storyteller, Kuhu Deshpande, is a 20-year-old from Mumbai, studying in her second year of 3D animation and VFX program at the School of Entertainment Arts. She's fond of all things art, from writing to painting, and enjoys spending her time with a good book or watching films. She grew up with a love for swimming, which has now translated into a quiet connection to water bodies. The water bodies in question are all places she frequented throughout her life and found herself sorely missing them during the pandemic. A beach, a sea face, and a swimming pool together spell out the perfect recipe for Kuhu's happy place. We have two place experts for the session today. Our first place expert, Chavi Lal, is a graduate from Sir J.J. College of Architecture and has studied urban design from University College London. She's working as an associate principal at Perkins Eastman. In over 15 years of her professional experience, she has designed many educational and institutional campuses and large-scale mixed-use projects. She has worked on waterfront projects ranging from new ports, revitalization of old portlands, and creating active destinations along water systems. Her work is informed through research and dialogue with stakeholders to translate the design vision, keeping human experience in the forefront of development. She's passionate about placemaking and sustainability and integrates them closely in all her work. Currently, she's working on a campus targeting net zero energy and water. Apart from professional work, she's associated with academia and is active in mentoring. Our second place expert, Rishi Agarwal, an environmental activist, has for over 2 decades engaged closely with environmental and urban issues in Mumbai, mostly out of individual passion and commitment to developing more environment-friendly cities, and at times in professional capacity with civil society organizations. In 2016, he founded Mumbai Sustainability Center as a not-profit platform to bring together some of his work and provide opportunities for a next generation to engage their talent. We now begin our conversation around Waterscape of Mumbai and invite Kuhu to please present her play story.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kuhu, and I'd like to just take a moment to introduce the video that you are about to watch. I chose to represent an element rather than a particular place, and that's water, more specifically the water bodies of Bombay. In this video, I'll take you through my intimate...
Kuhu, you are on mute.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kuhu, and I'd like to just take a moment to introduce the video that you are about to watch. I chose to represent an element rather than a particular place for my project, and that's water, more specifically the water bodies of Bombay. In the video, I'll take you through my intimate connection to 3 places in Mumbai that I hold very near to my heart: the Worli Sea Face, Juhu Beach, and a swimming pool that I grew up going to. These three places impacted and molded my life in covert ways, and it's time I paid homage to them. The reason I chose these places was because I've always felt drawn to the element of water, and it took a global pandemic to realize just how much it means to me.
Water Bodies of Bombay by Kuhu Deshpande. As a resident of modern day Mumbai, I have an appreciation for the structures and industries of the city. However, as a human being, I tend to have a soft spot for the simpler things in life. The things that connect me with the planet rather than the place. The essence of the place, one may even say. Everyone is aware of the five elements of nature: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the purest and basic elements that make up our planet. It is with these elements that we as natural beings have a primal connection. I personally have a connection to water. There seems to be something about water that draws me like a moth to a flame. For as long as I can remember, I have had a certain fondness for spaces that are near water bodies. It could be a beach, a sea face, or even a swimming pool. This is why I felt it was important that I write about the water bodies of Bombay that have a special place in my heart. Three specific such places spring to mind: Juhu Beach, Worli Sea Face, and a swimming pool I was and will forever be fond of. These places resonate within me, and I have a certain set of precious memories in each of them. Some of my earliest memories revolve around day visits to the swimming pool. It used to be within walking distance from my school campus. The pool in question, Prabhutankar Thakre Krida Sankul, or more commonly known as PTKS, is a gymnasium cum garden in Vileparle East. People of all ages can go there for any activity from table tennis and jogging to swimming and gymnastics. The place was established in 1998 by the late Dr. Ramesh Prabhu, who had a vision of encouraging everyone to lead an active and healthy lifestyle. That vision has since been recognized by many, as there are countless visitors to PTKS each and every day. The garden is a serene walk track built away from the gymnasium itself. There you would find a lot of greenery surrounding a track and a kids' play park with swings and slides. There is also a large fish tank to the left, opposite the kids' play park area. The gymnasium has an entrance that leads into an open space where a gymnastics setup is laid out, complete with hanging bars and mats. As we step out on the other side to the open swimming pool deck, the seating area is a tiny strip right overhead. The first thing you see is a large horizontally rectangular swimming pool right in front. At the right end, there are diving boards and a warm up space complete with racks of floats. As I mentioned, the gymnasium pool was a mere walking distance away from my school. For that very reason, our school had made an arrangement with them. This involved several classes from our school traipsing off to occupy the swimming pool for 2 hours every Friday. This is the source of many of my formative memories. The single file line as we walked all together to the pool, the locker room filled with dozens of chattering girls, the addictive smell of chlorine, the chilly wet floor, the cold water engulfing me as I plunged in. The memories I am describing are from a decade ago, but they remain vivid in my mind simply because it was one of my favorite environments. I looked forward to Fridays less for the weekends and more for this experience. Another one of my favorite spaces in Bombay is the Worli Sea Face, a long stretch of tile along the shores of the city in Worli, looking out at the great Arabian Sea. It also looks out onto the majestic Bandra Worli sea link that connects the suburbs to South Bombay. In reality, it is nothing more than a wide footpath adjacent to the sea, but to me it means a lot more. It is a place where we can sit and observe the beauties of nature, and I have memories of doing precisely that. When I was younger, my aunt lived in an apartment in Worli, a tall building with sea facing windows. Her flat was high up on the 24th floor. The window that faced the ocean was always open when I visited, and I had a designated spot on the beanbag right by the windowsill. The altitude and direction meant that the winds were strong and cold, and always carried the scent of the salty water, just the way I liked it. The view was to die for. Each sunset was tinted with every hue of orange, pink, and purple you could envision. Even when the days were cloudy and drab, the ocean sparkled. I could spend hours simply sitting in that window and looking out onto the view. Besides that, the sea face itself holds its fair share of fond memories, particularly later in the evening when the sun has set and the horizon begins to twinkle with lights. The street by the ocean is always busy, and watching the cars whiz by under the orange lights is fascinating, particularly when paired with a hot roadside chai in the cold night air. I have one memory of going for a long night drive with my father one night when I was first learning driving, and we stopped at the sea face and sat there for a good while, talking and gazing out at the sea. Last but certainly not least, Juhu Beach is a lifelong favorite hangout spot. Juhu Beach is a rocky sandy beach that stretches for about 6 kilometers along the western coast of suburban Mumbai. The recorded history of Juhu Beach dates back to the 19th century, when Juhu was but a long, narrow island. At that point, Juhu was called Juvan by the Portuguese and was inhabited by diverse groups of people like Bhandaris and Agris. The area of Juhu itself underwent many major cultural shifts, most notably the dawn of aviation era in the 20th century, which gave birth to the Bombay Flying Club in 1929, now known as Juhu Aerodrome. The beach was also frequently visited by Mahatma Gandhi for walks when he visited Mumbai during the freedom struggle. To pay tribute to his visit, there is a famous statue of Gandhiji by the beach, as well as a lane named after him. Fast forward to the present day, the expansive beach is a hotspot for hundreds of tourists and locals each day. The inner side of the shore is lined with food stalls that sell authentic Mumbai style street food, everything from shev puri and bhel puri to full meals of pav bhaji. It doesn't end there. You can also find smaller stalls that offer sweet treats like candy floss and shave ice. Until a couple of decades ago, there used to be horse pulled carts offering short rides around the beach until it was banned. There are many different sections of the beach, each one having a vastly different thing to offer to visitors. There are some very rocky segments where one can sit among the large rocks and look out to sea. There is a section a bit away from the main entrance, which has stalls and kids' Ferris wheels and merry-go-rounds. The large, expansive strip of sand has much to offer, and this makes for some amazing experiences and memories no matter who you are. I live quite close to Juhu Beach, so it is a frequent place for me to visit with friends to relax. The ambience at the beach, particularly at sunset at twilight hours, is a peaceful and calming one, and I enjoy being in that space at that time with people I love. I do not have any specific memories from my time there, but it is more so that I greatly enjoy the energy of the place. The smells of the salty air intertwined with the rich aromas of the food are enough to make anyone feel happy and content. Add to that the view of the violent pinks and oranges in the sky as the sun sets beyond the horizon, while the fine sand envelops my fingers as I sit. This, for me, sets the scene for a perfectly comfortable spot to mingle with friends, where we can have good conversation and watch the people around us play games or walk their pets. These three places, although they have one key factor in common, are quite different from each other. For one thing, even though these are all public spaces, the degree to which they are public varies a lot. I do not mean that simply in the sense of how many daily visitors the place garners, although that is a part of it too. I mean it more so in the nature of the place and how we interact with our surroundings. To elaborate, I think of the swimming pool or gymnasium as a more private place than most because it is a place we all go to do our own thing, be that swimming, gymnastics, or table tennis. Everyone is focused on their own goal, minding their own business, even while in the company of others. Such is the energy of the place, where everyone comes to zone out on their activity. Similarly, even the worldly sea face can be said to be not as public of a space as we are made instantly to believe. When I meet a friend at the sea face, the two or more of us tend to engage in conversation, and that makes it feel as though we exist in a bubble along many other passerbys. Many groups of people coexist in conversations, all independent of the others. This gives a sensation of privacy despite being in a rather public place. Finally, the same can be said of Juhu Beach, although that is considerably less private than the other two. The reason behind this is not only the extremely high number of daily visitors, but also because the beach is a wide expanse of land that anyone can occupy any area of. An added factor is that people watching is a big part of my visits to the beach, so the attention I pay to the people around me affects the feeling of being in a bubble with my friends. This argument can be made about pretty much any public space, but to me, it speaks volumes about my attachment and connection to water. Whenever I'm near it, I seem to feel like one with the body of water. This is precisely the reason why I chose to write about these places. When asked to revisit these places from my memories, it occurred to me for the first time that I am drawn to water, and these places have individually impacted my life in some way. I tend to become vividly immersed in my surroundings when any one of these places is concerned. In conclusion, the places that truly touch our hearts should be cherished, and for me, they are these water bodies of Bombay.
Thank you so much, Ku, for this very interesting place story about your connection with water and the favorite places that you have grown up in. I would now like to invite Chavi to, explore for us the connection that the people from Bombay have with water.
Hi. Thanks, Kuhu. That was indeed very interesting. Thanks for sharing your experiences and memories with us. People watching is one of my favorite activities too. And what also really impresses me is how you have sort of analyzed these experiences, which is where I'm going to take this further. I'm just quickly going to share my screen. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so like I was saying, it's very interesting how you have shared your personal memories associated with waterfronts. And what's also interesting is that you the experiences that you're referring to actually have a very close relationship with design, whether it's intentional or incidental. And it is these facets of design that you've touched upon that I'd like to take further and distill them and see if we understand what is it about places that attract us to them, right? So I've gathered here some of these aspects as filters through which we can see places of different characteristics. Things like, easy access to water bodies, or finding your own space with your friends in a crowded area, or spending time around water for wellness and recreation. These are all sort of characteristics that as designers, we try to bring in our work. And the memories that are formed thereof, they are what make these places cherishable and successful, right? Memories are also based individually, based on one's experience of the place, and also collectively, which depends largely upon the function of that place and what it means to citizens. So, and place making, as I believe, for a designer is preparing that canvas where users can fill in their experiences and make it their own, have ownership for it at personal and collective levels. And that really takes the place. So just looking at this a little from a macro to micro level, historically, human settlements and later cities have always developed around some big natural resource. And water bodies has been one such big draw for cities. So today, global cities along waterfronts have a strong image and identity, which is associated with water. And it is the same for Mumbai. The Gateway of India, Marine Drive, Bandra-Worli Sea Link that you have talked about are iconic landmarks of the city that most people think of when they mention Mumbai. So these landmarks form the big identity for the city, and they have a recall value that help create the image of Mumbai. And this image of the city creates a sense of pride for its citizens, and that's an important aspect for any large city. What's also interesting in our case is that these landmarks were built over different periods in time. So they have kept adding to the value of this image of the city, right? But apart from the large icons, what makes any city get its unique identity is its open spaces. Open spaces in different cities would have a different characteristic. Say open spaces in Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore, they are all very different in scale and character. And what makes them unique is that they are all shaped by that city's own history and culture and how the city has evolved. This is an aspect that we designers delve into in great detail to see how the city evolved over time, how streets and blocks were formed, how open spaces were framed around them. And in case of Mumbai, the water bodies, the history associated with them, and the native communities who live here, they give us this very unique identity for Mumbai. So the image to the left is of Banganga tank. This tank is believed to be built in about 1100 AD, and it's got a mythological story behind it as well. But it has evolved over these centuries, and the city has also evolved around it. So the function of the tank has evolved from religious uses to day-to-day chores, from events to last rites rituals. The tank has seen it all. So for a place like this, memories also evolve over time. Somebody may associate Banganga tank with a beautiful musical evening, or for someone else, it could be a place of reverence. So that's sort of unique about these historical places that are set so rooted into the culture of the city. To the right is Sassoon Docks. Sassoon Docks is a hub for the fisherfolk community of the city. It's bustling with activity since early morning hours. This too is more than a century old, and it marks the big commercial activity of that time. It still is an active fish market, and its significance to the community is irreplaceable. But apart from the community itself, it is also used for film shootings, for exhibitions, for cultural events. And all that ties it up with locals and citizens at large. So water bodies of the city have been respected, have been worshipped. There have been festivals associated with them. This relationship has been enhanced further as you see cultural events and gatherings that are celebrated along the waterfronts. This it brings in a sense of association and belonging for citizens with these water bodies. This is what sort of makes them their own. You mentioned of being drawn to simpler things. That I believe is such an inherent human nature, right? And more so for people like us who are in dense urban environments, that we get drawn to nature. We like to get away from our busy lives and stare into space like you used to do at your aunt's place. So these water bodies offer us these vantage points where Mumbaikars step out on a daily basis just to connect with nature. And again, these vantage points are sort of differently characterized. There may be a historical place like the Sirvi Fort, which is now a great viewing spot for migratory birds. Or there is, the other example here that I'm pulling up is the garden along Powai Lake, which is, the lake has always been there, but the garden was more recently developed with the promenade and stuff. But when we talk of the need of humans to connect with nature, let's not forget that there are other species for whom this is a natural habitat. So water bodies and ecosystems around them are home to extensive biodiversity that is struggling to coexist with the city. There are many biodiversity hotspots in the city that are in constant threat with urban activities and lifestyles. We forget that we are not only threatening the habitat of other beings, but that in turn will threaten our own lives. And this is something Rishi will actually get into greater detail, so we can come back to this. But the other aspects of being connected to open space is that, which you also mentioned, Kuhu, is a magical and humbling experience to see nature in its full glory. So we get to witness the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets with dramatic skies, cool breezes, the smell of the ocean. That itself could de-stress a person. So sights of people walking, jogging, exercising along the waterfront by oneself or in groups. There are laughter clubs. This is very common to see in Mumbai. For most of these people, it is this 1 hour in the day that they spend on their well-being, and it means a lot. Now, what's very interesting here is that these spaces are actually social equalizers, because you see people from all classes, all genders, like there is no restriction to who is here. Everybody participates equally in being in these places. So that is very important for a city like Mumbai. The other thing is that not all water bodies have a design intervention. Water bodies, this big form of nature, doesn't require an intervention at times. Building a castle in the sand or just watching migratory birds, that itself is a cherishable experience. That itself forms that memory. But what's important from a design perspective is to think, what is it makes that these waterfronts so successful as a public space? So one thing is that they are safe. One could be at Marine Drive or Worli Sea Face late in the night, early in the morning, and it's totally cool, right? You could go to Sirvi Fort, you could walk through the Kolivada to go to Worli Fort, and nobody would bother you. I think that is a big part of people being encouraged to use these waterfronts as public spaces. But the other thing is that there are design interventions that have come in at many places. And the idea is to make them more friendly to people. So at many of our waterfronts, we have pedestrian promenades that are designed to actually make them more walkable. Now, the thing there is that we are not entirely there in terms of walkability, right? There are many challenges like actually walking over from nearby neighborhoods to these promenades, or maintenance issues in the promenades where you may have, broken pavers and they become unsafe for senior citizens or younger kids. So demographic wise, we are not sort of making them equalizers. But having said that, Mumbaikars are people who walk, and that is an inherent trait. So, while it is being slowly lost because at many places cars have sort of taken over the streets, but if we were to just imagine that if this walkability network was to be fortified, so many more people would prefer to actually get on it. And there have been initiatives that have begun in that direction, and that's a change that we would like to accelerate. So the question is, how do we do that? Do we expect this change to happen from authorities, or what else can happen? What's interesting is that there have been many initiatives from community point of view where stakeholders have come together and brought about a change. And there are such projects in Mumbai as well. But what I'd like to talk about today is actually a project from the other side of the world. So, and I'm talking about this because this is something which I am personally very passionate about. So, most cities today are grappling with climate change adversities. So like Mumbai, Rio de Janeiro is a coastal city, and it has issues of flash floods and storming, and the permeability of water is very limited due to the rampant development. And due to this development, citizens actually find it very hard to reach out to nature, what we were talking about earlier, through the planned open spaces. So what the community here did to address both these concerns is to come up with the idea of creating rain gardens. So these rain gardens are created by taking away hard paved areas in public places and replace them with native plant species with permeable soil. So this not only helps improve rainwater percolation, but it brings nature, it brings the greens into our neighborhoods. It also bridges the gaps in the urban ecosystem, which will tie back to the biodiversity. So this idea of strengthening this blue-green network, which is the network of water and open spaces with native landscapes, is something which has picked up a lot of significance in many megapolises around the world. The idea is to reinforce open space network and bring in native species and habitat so as to build environmental resilience for the city. Now here, Rio de Janeiro has 27% open spaces, whereas Mumbai has only 3.7%. So imagine the amount of work we need to do to get ahead in this direction and to improve this blue-green network for Mumbai. This effort needs to come from all of us in our own capacity. It could mean a little kitchen garden. It could mean converting your balcony with native plants. You could adopt an open space in your own society. And all of this from smaller scale onwards will all contribute to strengthen the network at the urban level. This is something we truly believe in, and for this reason, to sort of talk about how stakeholders become stewards of change, we made this effort by conducting a studio with KRVI, which is an architecture school in Mumbai. This studio was conducted as a participation in the Local Projects Challenge. This is an initiative by Center of Sustainable Urban Development at Columbia University. There were 11 cities across the world which were selected, and Mumbai was one of them. They had asked professionals of the city to take up a real project in the city and to work with students to come up with design proposals, keeping the sustainable development goals in the forefront. So we did that. We worked with students and we looked into the Mumbai Portland development. But what we did differently was that we emulated a real project process. So also the officials at Mumbai Port Trust supported us through this process, and students worked through the studio as representatives of different stakeholder groups to see the project from that group's perspective. Because I do believe that there is a lot of disconnect in the way different stakeholders look at a project, and the only way we can move forward is to understand each other's perspective and find a way to move ahead collectively. So this process was recognized, and we received an award for innovation in education at the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi in 2020. So this is where I'd like to sort of end with this thought that we are all guardians and protectors of our open spaces around us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chavi, for giving us this insight into the water bodies and the open spaces of Mumbai. So when we are talking about water bodies, automatically, and when we're talking especially about the backwaters, the mangroves come to, our mind immediately. So I would now like to invite Rishi, who has actually worked for a decade around these, natural ecosystems, to share his story with us.
Thank you, Urvashi, and it's going to be a bit tough to follow up on Kuhu and Chavi. I think it was fascinating to go through their presentations, especially I think Kuhu, because it made me be on Juhu Beach rather than in this virtual gathering. And it's an irony of our times that festival of spaces have to be held in a cold server, which is essentially what is happening right now rather than in a open, vibrant space. So just to give a background, it's not a decade. In fact, since almost half a decade, I've been less and less active in Mumbai's issues after a burnout. But 2 decades back, I, along with a very small set of people, were at the forefront of trying to save mangrove forests in Mumbai, along predominantly the western coast of Mumbai, but also eastern coast and eventually the whole of Mumbai metropolitan region. It's almost 2 decades since I was the co-founder of the Mumbai chapter of Mangrove Society of India. And 2 decades back, especially, environmental awareness was extremely poor. Climate change seems to be a big buzzword now, and every second person seems to talk about climate change. But I remember that's the time when I was speaking about the threat of sea level rise and how mangroves and our coastal wetlands are extremely important for multiple reasons. And the real estate lobby, of course, saw it otherwise, because everything which is seafront facing is at a very high premium in Mumbai. And there was a lot of impact lot of efforts at illegal reclamation of mangroves, especially in areas like Versova, Lokhandwala, Mad, Marve, the whole Malad Creek, which is unrecognizable today from what it was 2 decades back. And so that was the whole effort. But also I've been not just with mangroves, but also walkability in Mumbai and other urban areas. And I feel that the streets are one of the, when we are talking festival spaces or places, this is, there cannot be anything more democratic than streets. And yet it's really unfortunate. And that's why when I was looking at Kuhu's presentation, it was just reminding me how much less I enjoy places now, because I am too much on the acrimonious side of governance and politics and activism and advocacy and running advocacy groups. And sometimes you lose the that essence of why you're saving them. You're saving them so that people can enjoy it, but you yourself don't end up enjoying at all. So it was good to go through. What I'll do is I'll quickly in 2 minutes take through a small presentation which I had discussed with you and Chavi earlier. And this was basically about issue which I felt strongly about. And this is something, a presentation which I had developed in 2016. And this is also something which I've discussed quite passionately since 2 decades. I've not gone anywhere with it. Maybe I'll revive. I've not been active for the past few years. But the whole idea was that what do people relate to when we discuss mangroves? And people generally think of mangroves as dirty, as places where mosquitoes breed, and there is death and disease, which is quite contrary to how they are when they exist naturally. So this is not what people see. I mean, incidentally, this whole patch of mangroves in the front, it's June 2001, slightly more than 20 years now. I was responsible for saving this whole patch from illegal dumping from the neighborhood developer. And over 6 months, we had a tough fight, and we managed to save 50 acres, which is what you see before the transmission tower. That whole patch of land was under imminent danger of, and in fact, this is a image from 2013. The image from 2001 or 2 was that on the right hand side, half the mangroves had been decimated, and they, through our efforts, they revived later on. But this is, like I've said in the brackets, that only the wealthy get to see this from their apartments. And you have some of the most premium apartments in Lokhandwala complex, Andheri West, from where you'll be able to see it. What people on the ground see is this, which is a lot of debris and garbage dumped at the edges of mangroves, people urinating, all kind of junk being thrown over there. This wall was not there, but I just like to keep sharing this example. And if you look behind the wall, this is what you get to see. And that's why I'm not in favor of walls. And my proposal has always been to demolish the wall and create a promenade like Carter Road, so that people can, and that's the whole thing which Chavi spoke about, design, that how we design the edges of mangroves or any of the edges determines the use. If the edges are not attractive, inviting, safe, and beautiful, then generally you won't see. I mean, right now the footpath over there is empty, and nobody, because what is not conveyed in the picture is a stench of urine, because at night this whole place will end up being used for open urination and all that. So this is how people lose out. And again, there is a big difference between government. Of course, I would say that government participation has improved a lot in the past 20 years. But if you could read that order, it prohibits dumping of debris, and that's exactly what is happening right below that whole edge, which means that, and also Mumbai is a place which is starved of open spaces. We keep hearing that statistic of 0.001 acre per 1,000 people, which is, I mean, if you compare the Delhi average, I think it is 4 acres per 1,000 people of open space availability. So in a city where open space availability is so poor, I think it's criminal to not manage the spaces which we already have. Chavi spoke about, say, the Portlands, and I was involved in those discussions at times. But I would feel a bit of anxiety and I think irritation when too much of discussion of Mumbai Portland, because frankly speaking, not many people access that. I mean, we aren't having half as much discussion about neighborhood parks, about our walking spaces, etc., which are spaces which people, and especially in a time-strapped city like Mumbai, where people don't have time to go and enjoy a Juhu Beach also. The most immediate spaces and places are the ones. And this could be cultural heritage. It could be a Banganga, which is always in the news every year for the amount of dead fishes which float up on the banks because of eutrophication. And people use it for all kind of needs without investing in its upkeep and taking care of. And that's been the big concern for me, that in Mumbai, people have a huge amount of money, but all that money is reserved for the top 10, whatever uses you can. But there's no philanthropy towards advocacy groups which are fighting to improve the experience of public spaces, save them from privatization, save them from degradation. So those are the kind of things. I won't get repetitive. This is just another few images along the eastern, and I could share hundreds of images of and which would be completely in contrary to what Kuhu and Chavi have shared, which is beauty and romantic and nice and beautiful. I could share. I don't want to end up with sharing a lot of dirty images, but this was essentially the whole idea was to develop a PPP, which is a much abused word, but a public-private partnership where citizens, advocacy groups work to enhance our public spaces, not just mangroves, but of course mangroves over here, and create a world-class experience, because apparently, I mean, that's the only thing that we understand. We seem to be incapable of having an aesthetic sense of our own, organically, natively grown. We always have to have images of Hong Kong and New York and Singapore to be able to illuminate. All those design elements are absolutely simple, but we have to keep using that word world class. But so that's the whole idea, that let's clean up the whole thing and make the space available for leisure in a big way, and also let people see mangroves in a whole new light and not as harbingers of disease and garbage and dirt. So yeah, I'll leave over there and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Rishi, for this talk about the mangroves. We'll come to the mangroves and the flamingos. There was a very interesting thing that you told us about the flamingos. So we'll come to that later. Now, if people in the audience have any questions, please write down in the chat box. We'll take them up one by one. Chavi, we'd like to just understand once again, you talked about several, water associated spaces in the city of Mumbai. So maybe you could, if you just take one example of one of the space and help us understand what has been the evolving relationship of people with water bodies.
Taking example of one may be difficult, but I can talk of a few aspects, because I think even within the city, the context of every water body is different. Like you said initially, it is actually a whole system of a water network, right? So there's the ocean itself, but then there are lakes and there are creeks and all of that. I think in terms of evolution of the relationship, I would say that it has varied. Like I said, that there is a cultural aspect to it. So certain water bodies and open spaces that have been associated with for cultural reasons or historic reasons, like the Ganpati festival has a big association with water, and that has remained. But at the same time, the attitudes towards the use of water, while it's a great sort of, public place for people to come together, the use of the water itself, or rather the abuse of it, is something that I think people were completely sort of unaware of. And I think that is changing. There have been a lot of awareness that has happened. People like Rishi and many organizations who are working constantly, trying to educate people, trying to help people understand the importance of these ecosystems. There is definitely that the change in perspective that is happening. Now, is that change accelerated enough or at the pace enough that we want? Perhaps not. And there is a lot more work in that direction that needs to happen. But that's sort of more from the physical characteristic point of view. Now, the relationship from the other side, from the socializing, the human side of it, I think that is something that has always been there, that will remain, that will only strengthen. I don't think people will ever disassociate themselves with water. I think over time, our cultural festivals, the image I showed, one of the images is of Upwan Lake in Thane, which is just outside the city of Mumbai. They started a arts festival around the lake. And this is only recent. I mean, it must have been just in the past decade. So the Sassoon Dog exhibition, this was only recent. So I think a lot of these associations as to how to integrate these open spaces and waterfronts with the lives of people, that has been increasing. And I think that will continue to happen, because really for Bombay, that is our biggest draw as this big public open space, right? I mean, like I was saying, it's always one natural element that sort of forms a city. For Mumbai, it has been that waterfront. So that relationship, I think, continues to grow, and it's a great thing. It's very positive. The other side of it, which is about environmental consciousness, about strengthening the ecosystems, not destroying them. And those are aspects that we need to build on. Those are aspects that we need to, and that's at every level. And there is work that's needed there.
I would now just like to bring in Rishi. Rishi, basically, we all know that urbanization has its own, impact on cities, and especially on the ecosystems, the natural spaces. What would you say that people in Mumbai are missing out when we are talking about, mangroves? What kind of, association, if we may go back in time and see how people saw the mangroves as part of their, lives, and what has changed for them now? Is there any kind of, in connections with the communities used to have with these kind of, mangroves and natural ecosystems? What were the dependencies? Rishi, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I had muted myself.
Yeah.
We have to look at the evolution in the, say, past 30 to 40 years in terms of people's understanding of mangroves. I remember that when 20 years back, we were saving mangroves, and we were working with two kind of communities. One was the Kolis, which is the native inhabitants of Mumbai, and the other were the upper middle class who are non-natives, to say. They're migrants and people from all across the country, and generally much more wealthier than the native population, and living in plush apartments, a lot of which are on reclaimed lands. People had no clue of what mangroves are. In fact, the whole joke used to be that are we talking of mango groves, and where are those mangoes? And we had to say that no, these are not mango groves, these are mangroves, and mangroves are something different. And I remember for up till I think 2005, 6, 7 also, a lot of times people would, knowing that I was an activist fighting for mangroves, if they wanted to save a patch of forest next to their house, which could be inland, they would call me and say, sir, there are mangroves being destroyed. Will you come and please save them? And I had to tell them, these are not mangroves. This is inland. These are some trees which are growing in some kind of a wetland. So the understanding about mangroves was extremely poor. The only people who understood mangroves as thievery and other names was the Kolis, because they had a very intrinsic connection, and the mangroves were the places where fishes were spawning, crabs, and they had an inherent relationship with them, collecting crabs from the estuarine mudflats. So I think this whole understanding about mangroves, and the other thing which is difficult about mangroves is that there is no sense of instant gratification. Frankly, it is some of us who value them ecologically. This is not like a Juhu beach where you can go out and have a lot of fun with friends and family and come back. And yet they might be much more important than a Juhu beach. But again, it's the nature of human existence. I wouldn't blame necessarily Mumbai alone, because for all the negatives about Mumbai, about it being very fast paced and people not having time and being very commercially motivated, I think it's also a very human city. But at the same time, people are looking for instant gratification. You go to a mall, you can do 5 things together and quickly spend your time and come out. Mangroves are not that kind of a place. If you go there in the evening right now, you'll be bombarded with a swarm of mosquitoes and you'll rush out of that space. And a lot of times you'll be having awful odor coming in because of the untreated sewage and chemical effluent which goes and washes up into the mangroves. And yet they're extremely important in terms of being natural air conditioners. purifying the water, has enormous support in terms of flood prevention for a city like Mumbai, which has 3000 mm of rainfall. With climate change, extreme weather events going up, mangroves are the best defense against flooding. So it's been I think that the learning curve, that evolution is still happening. But thankfully, I would say in the past 20 years, people no longer think of mangroves as mango groves, and there is a clear understanding of what mangroves are.
Urvashi, if I may add.
Yes, please, Chavi.
So yeah, I agree with Rishi, and I want to talk about this particular experience of my own. So Godrej owns a large chunk of mangroves on the eastern waterfront, north towards the north. And through my architecture college, we had actually organized a walk for some of us through the mangroves, where their botanist had actually taken us around to even help us explain what are the different types of mangroves and what are the systems they require, which type attracts what kind of biodiversity. And it was a fascinating experience because you could see that, the sense of awareness is sort of so much more. Yes, there is slush and muck and all of that, but I think that is really the key. If in a very sort of eco-sensitive way, and there are other such hotspots like there is this little bird watching zone at Bhando Creek, which I showed an image of, which is also a beautiful place. Now the thing is, these kind of locations are great experiences for people to understand the importance of these ecosystems and how they contribute, and get more familiarized with them, because otherwise, like Rishi said, they have no idea what this means or what their role is and all of that. So I think some kind of association at a community level would be helpful. But at the same time, we have to be really mindful, because you don't want to make it like a big fair there with chips packets and plastic bottles and all of that. So I think that kind of orientation is needed, but I feel that would help. Like for me, that one visit really helped me understand that entire ecosystem so much better.
That I would just want to share that on a personal visit to Sindhudurg district, I came across a women-led initiative who were actually taking people around. So these boats were managed by the women. They were rowing the boats, and they were taking the tourists deep into the mangroves, and they were trained into the names of the species, the fishes, and everything. So that was very interesting that these kind of little initiatives are actually taking place and trying to raise awareness about these very, very fragile ecosystems. I would just like to bring now Kuhu into this. Kuhu, would you like to add to your experience? Have you been, do you know about the mangroves? What has been your experience with these, kind of ecosystems?
My experience with mangroves for sure is very limited, not really anything I can speak to. But like I kind of expressed in my video, it's like a lot of very rich, very romanticized memories for sure of water bodies and of, the communities that get built. And I found it very interesting. I think I can't place who was talking about it, but the workability, the workability and the safety and all of that, and how that increasing that would also help more people become more connected with these spaces. So yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed learning their perspectives, also architectural perspectives, and my very romantic and innocent view of these places.
So now we are almost, nearing the end of the session. But one quick question to both of you, Chavi and Rishi. How can Mumbai city leverage the waterways and the mangroves in planning? What do you see the future of these two? Chavi, would like to...
Chavi, after you.
Okay. I think there's a lot that can be done. Urvashi, when the three of us were talking, we had also spoken about water transportation Why does the city not leverage that? I think there is this constant tussle in Mumbai between, what its stance wants to be. And there are great minds in the city and there are great ideas. And a lot of these have been initiated and they started up. There were ferry rides from Navi Mumbai to Bhauja Dhaka, and there was a proposal of having ferries from Gorai to Bandra to Haji Ali, but in all of that, it's never somehow sort of, I believe, taken off, because there have been always sort of other priorities, I think, that have taken over, or other sort of perspectives that have become more important. So I think opportunities are immense. Mithi River is a big opportunity. I mean, there are many such examples in multiple cities, including in London, where Thames used to be so polluted and so dangerous and hazardous for human health. But look at where it is now. Because they cleaned up the river, they got their act together there. I believe Mithi could be as good as Thames one day. I think there is no stopping us from leveraging. In fact, that is how it should be. I think for coastal cities, leveraging your coastal ecosystem is the way to be, because that automatically builds in the resilience. The more we try to fight it, the more we are already seeing consequences of it. There's crazy amount of flooding. There are 2 months in the year where people are completely handicapped because you are at constant tussle with these natural ecosystems. If we were to work with them, and what I spoke of, the blue-green networks, this entire concept called sponge cities, where these networks actually become the inherent way of planning the city. And I don't think it's late for Mumbai to adopt that. I really don't think so. I think it needs to start at every intervention. But if we have that perspective, we can definitely take it forward from here.
I'll have a slightly differing view from Chavi, I think, because when she said that it's not too late, I think we've done some awfully bad mistakes in the past 15, 20 years. And the nature of some of these decisions is that you get locked in for at least 30, 40 years if you take the wrong decision into these decisions. And I mean, I get the perspective from where Chavi comes, because I've heard a lot of architects, urban designers, and I'm not a trained, I'm a trained nobody, but what I am is a plumber who gets into the dirty stuff of governance. And I do understand how terribly misorganized, or for the lack of, I mean, to be polite still, how bad our institutions are, the institutional network, how the governance, the politics of the city is really not conducive. Mithi is something which I've been involved with 15, 20 years now. And I've stopped being involved with the whole issue because it's become, I mean, there's a Victor Hugo Les Miserables, that phenomenal work by Victor Hugo, and where he's mentioned the sewer represents the soul of the city. And if I were to go by that, Mithi really is a reflection, which is a poor reflection of what Mumbaikars are, and in a sense, the character of Mumbaikars, which is a long way to go and which is reflecting in the Mithi. So I think we are in a, I really don't know. I think it's for time that a younger set, people like Kuhu, the most brilliant set of work and activism I did was when I was between 25 and 30 years of age. And I still respect youth much, much more than experience. And I think we're not seeing that kind of a new set of youth actors, younger people in their 20s and 30s come over and take charge and ownership for the city and do advocacy around improving it. I'm just a very vocal critic of a lot of youngsters who are into the climate bandwagon and keep throwing big words like climate justice and equity. I think there is so much to be done at the local level, which is not being done in terms of appreciating mangroves, in terms of appreciating the rivers, the creeks, the wetlands, the lakes, Thane was mentioned. Thane has such a beautiful set of lakes. So I think we need to do a lot if we to build up that appreciation. Over the years, we've taken thousands of children for walks in Godrej, Bhandop, Lokhandwala, Gorai. And for me, that's always been a complaint that a lot of these citizens don't turn up to support advocacy movements when they become adults. So I think those are big areas, because the whole thing is to be act as a check and balance on our elected representatives and institutions. Powai Lake was in the news for that illegal bicycling track of late. I mean, it's just crazy the kind of arrogance which has built up into the our institutions, and how politicized they are, and the lack of democracy in their functioning, and that can only be challenged through advocacy groups and activism, which needs to be supported by a much bigger. It's like a pyramid. You need to have a strong, broader base of people who will support the activist on top. But it cannot be like this. In fact, right now it seems something like an inverted pyramid or something like that, where the support at the base is very poor. So I think when even from a festival of spaces or places point of view, I'm not just talking mangroves. I think just celebration of our public spaces. Indians lack kind of public aesthetic, there's too much of private enjoyment, and there is very poor appreciation for public spaces in India, which really needs to change, I think.
You on that very thoughtful note, hoping that we can create more awareness at the grassroots and rope in more young people into this aspect of mobilizing people around places. I would like to thank Chavi, Rishi and Kuhu for this very insightful discussion.